In the first 6 months of 2026, over 100,000 Americans lost their jobs for one stated reason. Not a recession, not a scandal. The reason, printed plainly on the paperwork, was artificial intelligence. Oracle alone cut 21,000 jobs. Amazon cut 16,000. Meta cut 8,000. IBM cut nearly 8,000 more. Microsoft cut almost 5,000. The list kept growing. By that spring, AI had become the single most cited reason for layoffs in America. And then, the strangest twist of all. The man who helped build the technology issued a warning. Half of all entry-level office jobs, he said, could vanish within 5 years. Unemployment, he warned, could climb as high as it hasn't in generations. This is the story of how fast a machine learned to do the job. And the uncomfortable question underneath it all, was it really the machine's fault? Rewind to 2023. Artificial intelligence had just walked into the office, but only as a guest. It drafted emails, it summarized meetings, it suggested a better sentence here and there. Executives called it augmentation, a co-pilot, not a replacement. Every hand stayed on the wheel. Workers were told the machine would take the boring parts and leave the thinking to them. For a while, that promise mostly held. Productivity ticked upward. Anxiety stayed manageable. But underneath the calm, in labs few outside the industry were watching, something else was forming. Researchers weren't just teaching machines to answer questions anymore. They were teaching them to act, not a chatbot waiting for a prompt. Something that could plan, decide, and finish a task alone. Inside the industry, they had a name for this next step. They called it the agent. By 2025, the assistant had a successor, and its ambitions were considerably larger. OpenAI's own chief executive described these new AI agents in a phrase that stuck. He called them, plainly, a team of junior employees, available instantly, working around the clock. No salary, no sick days, no need to be trained twice on the same mistake. For a company weighing whether to hire a person or deploy an agent, the math grew simple. The tasks these systems reached for first were the ones junior humans had always started with: answering support tickets, drafting first-pass reports, screening resumes, writing routine code, the exact rungs of the career ladder where every new graduate used to begin. By the end of 2025, agentic AI wasn't a research demo anymore. It was a line item. In March of 2026, something crossed a threshold that analysts had been watching for years. For the first time ever, artificial intelligence became the single most cited reason for layoffs. Not restructuring, not cost-cutting in the old, vague corporate language, just AI. By May, artificial intelligence was cited in nearly 40,000 job cuts in a single month. That was 40% of every layoff announced across the entire American economy that month. Across the first half of the year, AI touched roughly a fifth of all announced layoffs nationwide. Economists had a term for what was building. They called it structural, not cyclical, unemployment, meaning this wasn't a downturn that would simply pass once the economy recovered. It was a rewiring of which jobs existed at all, and it was happening in real time. Behind every statistic sat a company with a name and a very specific decision. Oracle, the veteran software giant, eliminated 21,000 positions across its global operations. Amazon followed with 16,000 cuts, many aimed squarely at corporate and administrative roles. Meta eliminated 8,000 positions, even while pouring billions into its own AI ambitions. IBM cut close to 8,000 roles, a company that had automated payroll systems a century earlier. Microsoft trimmed nearly 5,000 jobs, even as its AI products broke revenue records. Smaller names followed the same pattern. Block, Atlassian, dozens of companies, one shared explanation. These weren't struggling companies. Most were posting record profits in the very same quarters. which made the layoffs feel different from any downturn workers had lived through before. No company said the quiet part out loud, quite like a small language learning app. Duolingo's leadership sent a memo that spread far beyond its own employees. The company was going, in its own words, AI first. Every task would start with a machine. It would stop hiring contractors for work artificial intelligence could already handle. Human headcount, the memo suggested, would only grow where a machine genuinely could not go. The backlash was immediate. Employees called it cold. Customers called it a warning sign. But inside boardrooms across the industry, plenty of executives quietly agreed with the logic. Few said it as plainly. Almost all of them were already doing some version of it. Of everyone who might have raised the alarm, almost no one expected it from him. Dario Amodei ran Anthropic, one of the very labs building the most powerful AI systems alive. His company's own models were, in part, doing exactly the kind of work he was worried about. Yet Amodei stood up publicly and said the plain part few executives dared to say. AI, he warned, could eliminate half of all entry-level white-collar jobs within 1 to 5 years. Unemployment, in his most alarming estimate, could climb to levels unseen in decades. Critics accused him of hype, of scaring the public to justify tighter AI regulation. Others pointed out an odd fact. The warning came not from a rival, but the builder himself. Whether hype or honesty, one thing was harder to dismiss. The layoffs were already happening, but a second, quieter question began circling almost as loudly as the warning itself. Was artificial intelligence really the cause of these layoffs, or simply the easiest excuse? Researchers noticed something odd. More than half of 2026 layoffs cited AI as the reason. Yet many of those same companies were simultaneously spending billions expanding their own AI systems. If AI were truly this devastatingly efficient already, why keep spending so heavily to improve it? Skeptical economists offered a blunter theory. AI made an easy, blameless line on a press release. Blaming a machine drew less backlash than admitting a company simply wanted fewer people on payroll. The truth, most researchers agreed, likely sat somewhere between the two explanations. Some roles genuinely vanished because a machine could do them. Others vanished because it was simply easier to say so. Whatever the true cause, the effect landed hardest on one specific group of people, those just starting out. Fresh graduates entering a job market that no longer needed them first. For decades, the entry-level job was where careers began. Junior analyst, trainee, first-year associate. Those roles existed partly to train tomorrow's senior employees, and partly because someone had to do the grunt work. Now the grunt work belonged to an agent that never needed training and never asked for a raise, which left an uncomfortable question hanging over an entire generation entering the workforce. If the bottom rungs of the ladder disappear, how does anyone climb high enough to matter? Some companies began experimenting with new kinds of entry roles, built around managing AI rather than replacing it. Whether that would be enough to rebuild the ladder was, in 2026, still an open question. Not every projection about this transformation was bleak. Some researchers pointed to a different number entirely. Estimates suggested artificial intelligence could displace as many as 85 million jobs worldwide by decade's end. But the same estimates suggested something else. As many as 170 million new jobs created, roles nobody had a name for yet. AI trainers, prompt engineers, machine oversight specialists. The optimists argued history had seen this pattern before. With every major wave of automation, old jobs ended. New ones, unimaginable beforehand, eventually took their place. The pessimists pointed out one crucial difference this time: the speed at which it was happening. Past transitions unfolded across decades. This one was unfolding across financial quarters. Whether the new jobs would arrive fast enough to catch those falling through the old ones remained unclear. By the middle of 2026, the office itself had quietly become a different kind of place. Fewer desks, fewer junior hires, more glowing dashboards, quietly finishing tasks nobody assigned by hand anymore. The people still there increasingly spent their days managing, checking, and directing machines rather than paperwork. Whether that made work better or simply fewer remained a question with no single answer. What was certain was the pace. No industry in memory had rewired this many jobs this quickly, not because the machine was cruel or even particularly intelligent about who it replaced, simply because it was cheaper, faster, and endlessly patient. And patience, it turned out, wins quietly. If this story raised more questions than it answered for you, that was rather the point. Subscribe for the next chapter of this story, and tell us in the comments what you think happens next. Somewhere tonight, in an office running quieter than it used to, the machine is still working.